Hello, folks. Back again with more about the ancient Egyptian Book of Two Ways. And it's got some photos. Probably want to delete this one. Move to the trash. Okay, so this seems to be the gatekeeper that is Sri Lanka. So I think that the head is Sri Lanka, and the these two white circles in his body are probably this island right here, which you can't really see because of these stupid yellow things, but basically Manar Island right here, and Pamban Island here, or Pamban or something, which is also called Rameswaram Island. And the whole thing here is sometimes called Rama Ketu, which means Rama's bridge, because even underwater it almost seems like there's a bridge, and there's some scientists say that it's actually a man-made bridge that used to be above water there. So I was realizing, because at first I was thinking that the islands must be this, because this whole ass thing here is an island, even though it's called a peninsula. It's pretty funny. It's really funny, like when you start trying to find out geography all around the world, and you find out all the totally weird and disparate ways things are like described. So this is a complete island. Doesn't touch Sri Lanka at all, except maybe in super low tide. But it's called a peninsula universally and officially called the Jaffna Peninsula, whereas these ones are called islands. And so I was realizing that even though this is a much bigger island, and it's split in two, so the southern and northern half of it are almost like separate islands because they're only barely connected by a small isthmus. So I was thinking that, of course, if there's going to be these big islands, it has to be these. But then I realized that even though these are shown big here, I think a lot of times when they put just the circles, the smaller circles for islands, it's not meant to be exactly proportional necessarily. It just indicates that there are islands. So, obviously, like, these islands are not, this is not proportional. Like, Manar Island is not like this big compared to Sri Lanka, and same with Panbam. But it's, if they try to make it proportional, they would have had to make it so small you couldn't see it, or they would have had to make Sri Lanka so big that it would be disproportionate to the rest of the map. So it's stylized. So I realize it has to be these two islands, because the whole, of course, the whole point of these maps is coastal sailing. It's all about the gatekeepers are, things that are along the coast that obstruct coastal sailing. So, and it seems to be assuming an eastward passage on this map. So if you're sailing east and you're trying to get from Western Asia to Eastern Asia, then you have to you're going to be sailing along the mainland coast here, and then you're going to be blocked potentially by Panbam, and then you have to just go between Panbam and Manar, because that's the real strait, you know, the Polk Strait or whatever. It's really, this is the real actual narrows of the strait, not over here. This is like huge wide berth. So there you go. I mean, also another thing that's confusing is the shape of Sri Lanka here is not very great. But that's a problem generally on this version of the Book of Two Ways. It's not always super exact. But I mean, if anything, I'm interpreting it as saying, like, you know, this is the big head of the snake, and then maybe something around this area is like the neck area. So certainly like Jaffna and but yeah, maybe just through this area is like considered the neck area. And I don't know, maybe between Jaffna and there, or between Jaffna and there. So yeah, it's not super exact shape, but and then this is India, just the same way that you know, mainland Southeast Asia was depicted as one of these gates, and then the Malay Peninsula was depicted as a like a tail coming out of one side of it. Seems like a shark tail. I mean, it's kind of confusing. It could also be called like a vine with leaves or something, but I think it's like a shark tail. So these are those islands. So this is Manar Island here, the one that's next to Sri Lanka, and then this is Panbam, which is next to India. So in between them, there's all this. Not really sure how much of these things are above water. I think these might be the fragmented man-built, or at least man-augmented ancient land bridge that's now submerged. Supposedly it was like submerged in the 14th century or by some big cyclone or something. Anyway, but even if these are all submerged, or at least most of them are submerged, you can see that still from here to here is a relatively thin passage compared to like the other side of you know, Polk Bay or whatever. The other side of this, like this, yeah, I guess this side, there's like another kind of a strait between India and Jaffna, but as I showed, it's not much of a strait. So this is the main strait. So it makes perfect sense why these two islands would be featured in the map. And, you know, they must have had a great importance for navigators, you know, kind of similar to the Pillars of Hercules in the Mediterranean. So yeah, basically, see what else we got here. Oh yeah, so this I wanted to show. This is from the American side of this map, and you know, it's along the coast of the southernmost part of the eastern coast of South America. So it makes sense that it would be Tierra del Fuego here. So, you know, it's not exact in every way, obviously. Like, it doesn't account for his big poofy chest here. It may be that they hadn't navigated every part of this. The main important part is just the head, because this is, you know, all the gatekeepers guard straits. So, and create straits by their presence. So this gatekeeper creates and guards the Strait of Magellan right here, which is, you know, an important strait, especially historically. So he guards it with his head. So that makes sense why they focus on this part, which must be the part that's closest to mainland Argentina right there. Whereas the other one, even though it's arguably more prominent of a peninsula, seems to be treated as just a little bump here. But I think that's because it's not as relevant as this one for the sailor. But it does kind of have a bit of the shape correct here. And then, so I guess they could argue that this part is this part, and then maybe this part is his arm going down. Who knows? And then you can see like the back, you know, it's not super exact, but you know, you can see it's like kind of short, or I guess it goes in, goes back, has kind of a point there, comes in, and then he has the two legs. So I'm not exact. I think this is one of the legs. This might either be the front leg. Maybe this is part of the front leg, and then it has a bigger top part. And then maybe this is the bottom leg, and maybe including some of these little islands that come off it. So yeah, that part's a little more obscure, but it's more about, or the important thing is up here to see the Strait of Magellan, you know, going over the tip of his pointy head there. So, you know, he's kind of a cute one. And he's like the biggest, he might be the biggest gatekeeper on that side of the map. I mean, that map is not, it's hard to know how proportional it is. And honestly, that map, it seems to be better for Afro-Eurasia than it is for America. So a lot of the stuff in America is a bit off. Like, it seems to have this guy, Tierra del Fuego, as larger than even like Baffin Island, which is, whereas actually Baffin Island is like probably larger than all the other gatekeepers in America. You know, so let's see. What is this? Manar. Yeah, so this is just back to the to Britain, and then here's this guy, Wellington Island, in the Chilean, you know, Patagonian archipelago, west of the ice fields. And so, yeah, this is another one where it's not completely exact, but you can basically make out the main contours of it. And he's like surrounded by all these like little guys, which seem to be all the other islands surrounding him. Not exactly sure which these are. I mean, it seems like they're distinctive and they should be easier to identify than you know, these ones, but have not yet identified them. I was thinking that maybe these were the Falklands, but I don't know. I mean, the Falklands are basically each the same approximate size of each other. So I'm not sure if that fits for these or not. Anyway, and I'm not sure if this guy is meant to be an island. There is like a bigger island, like north of here, that maybe could be this, and it's surrounded by small islands. So yeah, Britain on the map is shown like this. So I'm interpreting this thing as being Ireland, even though it's obviously not the shape of Ireland. But again, this map is quite stylized. And just the way these seem to be the Shetland, Orkney, and Hebrides islands. But of course, these are not the actual shapes of those things. Stylized symbolism. But, you know, it seems that at least they got right the fact that, you know, the bottom, the two ends, like that Britain is kind of long, and but that it's widest at the two ends and skinniest in the middle. And it has, you know, Ireland next to it. And it's described as like the white-haired one, which fits with the White Cliffs of Dover. But the main thing that doesn't fit is his shape and the fact that and the way that he's turned. Because for him to be, or I guess it does fit, but let's see. No, it doesn't fit. Because the reason it doesn't fit is that if this is Ireland, then that would mean that this is Scotland and this is England. And while you could say that maybe this leg, I mean, it's hard to know always if the legs are included in everything in all of these. So like in this case, it could be that this leg is, you know, Cornwall and Devon, and then this leg is Wales, basically, the Welsh Peninsula. But if so, then what the fuck is this? Because there's nothing that, you know, if this is Britain, right? This is Scotland, England, Wales, Cornwall. And so, you know, like, yeah, this could potentially, like, Cornwall you could say Cornwall is this leg, and then the Welsh Peninsula here is this leg. But if so, where would you put his tail? It would have to be just this little thing here, or this round thing. It wouldn't really fit. Whereas it kind of does fit if you do it, like basically the only way it seems to fit to me is, unless it's even more stylized than I understand, is if you flip it around, flip it to the other side. And there are other gatekeepers that are flipped, you know, like in these maps, like well, what's flipped in here? I think the main thing is flipped is Kamchatka, because Kamchatka, the tip of Kamchatka Peninsula points towards Japan, which is here, not away from it. And these islands, the Kuril Islands of Siberia, go towards Japan as well, and they actually become this tail, or they connect to basically what, because this tail is composed of the Japanese Kuril Islands. So so anyway, it seems interesting that on the two ends they turned the gatekeeper backwards. And there are other books of two ways where they have backwards gatekeepers, where they show the shape more or less correct, but they flip it the opposite direction, you know. And I think they did that with a lot of like gods and motifs and stuff in ancient times, that they would just show it flipped sometimes. They certainly did that with Newfoundland in Seppi's Book of Two Ways. But yeah, so these are the furthest gatekeepers. This is on one side. The western side is Britain, and then the eastern side is Kamchatka. And so these are the ones that are flipped. Everything else is not flipped for the most part. I mean, you could argue whether Korea is flipped, but it's that's kind of I mean, Korea doesn't exactly have a tip or a point the same way as Kamchatka does, so it's a less relevant question in terms of that. But yeah, everything else is not flipped except just the two ends. So that may be significant, that once you're at the end, you're basically almost to the underworld, so things are starting to reverse, just as once you're in the antipode, everything is reversed, all the directions are reversed and everything. So let me see if I can find yeah, here. So yeah, this guy is yeah. Well, anyway, there's like an ear. It's like a rabbit. This is Newfoundland, right? So he's this rabbit here, and this is not the best. This is like the original version, not the reconstructions where it's made clearer. But on the reconstructions, at least you can see that that the these are different versions. This is like B3C, and I forget the other one. This one's B3C, I believe. It's Rio Grande de Santiago in Mexico, and Lake Chapala. And there's that Kamchatka, Indochina, the Malay Peninsula. Wow. Maybe I have to check Seppi. So yeah, even there it's hard to see, but here you can see it at least, but so yeah, like here you can see the rabbit better, much better. You can see Newfoundland on the Egyptian map because it's it's they repainted it, you know, with bolder lines and everything. And you can see, hopefully, on the American one, the the head of the ears of the rabbit pointing up on this side and the tail on this side. So, you know, it does look like a rabbit, but it's clearly faced this way. You know, these are the ears. These are the ears. This is its bushy tail. This is its legs. You know, this is the bottom, this is the top. So it's clearly faced that way. But the tradition, you know, these Book of Two Ways traditions still, they sometimes just flip them around. So it's, you know, I'm almost certain that it is based on that shape of the rabbit, but instead of being faced this way on the coast, being faced west or south or anything like that, it's actually faced kind of northeast. And so yeah, that's another example of why, of one that's flipped. Like none of these other ones are flipped. Although this one also might be flipped, because this might be, I had assumed that this was waterways, like this is the Amazon River right here. So I was thinking this was like the Rio de Plata that like separates like Paraguay from Argentina or something. It's like this huge, I think you can actually see it right here. Like you can see the bay a little bit there, and it creates this huge wetland system throughout much of southern South America. So I was thinking that was what this was, but now I'm wondering if actually it might be Tierra del Fuego, you know, just like in that later version that has a similar, somewhat similar looking figure, and maybe similarly oversized perhaps. But anyway, so there's a good chance I mistook this one and that it's actually Tierra del Fuego, because he has the same kind of mouth as the one that does seem to be. So in that case, he might be flipped around too. So maybe at the two ends of the map, kind of the northern end and the southern ends, you get these guys that are flipped around, just as at the eastern and western end of the later B5C map, you get these gatekeepers flipped around like Britain. Because I really think like Britain has to be flipped, otherwise it doesn't work. Like the tail has to be these islands of you know, the Orkneys and the Shetland Islands. And it doesn't really account for this, you know. If so, it just kind of seems to include all this as the tail, unless this is somehow, yeah, I don't know. So it's certainly not exact, but at least this would fit better, because, you know, the skinniest part of Britain is around here or here. So that would make sense that it's closer to Scotland than it is to like, you know, Dover. By far the widest part and is England, southern England. And so that would certainly make sense if the head is that, and the pointy nose could be this, you know, Cornwall. And it may be, I was trying to identify the arm, you know, it could be that the arm is Strathclyde. I was thinking it could be Kintyre. It could even be Wales here somehow. Or it could be that the arm is just symbolic and that the point is that that Britain is closer to Ireland south of, north of Cornwall. So, that's the only way this could work, because if you flip it, if you don't flip it, so I just took the image and I flipped it backwards. So this is the only real way this works. So I'm sticking with it. So yeah, Orkney, Shetland, Orkney, Hebrides. And I guess my phone's about